So now I want to add the functionality to be able to edit the posts. And so what I'm going to do is go into the Angular 2 folder, into source, and then into app, then components, and into the blog component. And I'm going to create a new component inside of blog, so I guess you could call it a subcomponent. And so let me go into there. So ng generate component, and I'll name it edit blog. And so inside of my routes, I'm going to add a new one for that one. And then I'm going to import that component first. Okay, and so the path will be edit blog / and then a custom ID in the parameters. And then users, of course, should be logged in. So we'll add that auth guard in there. And then you want to just go ahead and test this just by clicking the edit button. We already added the proper link. So you'll see here it takes you to the edit blog page, and then it passes in the ID of the blog that we're trying to edit. And that's how we're going to get the blog from the database. So I'm going to go into the edit blog component and modify the HTML. So I'll just do my usual headers. And pass in my custom error message or success message. That I will show ng if message is true. So let me just pass that in here before I forget. Set it to false by default. And then add g class of message class. Right. Then I'm going to create my form. And then I want a click event for submitting the form. I'll name it update blog submit. Right, just so I don't forget. And this will be the first input, which is going to be for the title. And just add some bootstrap to this. So instead of adding form control name, because we don't need to do any validation or anything like that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use ng model, which looks like this. And then blog.title. So before I forget, I'll go ahead and create that in here as well. And since I'm in here already, I'll just do the body as well, since I know I'll be needing that. Now, I'm not going to be doing any of the validation that I did for the original form for creating blogs, just to save time. And actually, instead of this input, I forgot I'm going to need a text area because it's going to be a little bit big. And I'll just pass in ng PNG model here. Right, then I'll add a link here. And so what I'm going to do here is give the option of going to the delete page for this blog post. That way, if they click edit first, they'll be able to go in and hit delete and go to a separate page. So then I'll just pass in the ID for that after delete blog. And then inside of here, I will pass that button. And then since I'm not using form control here, I need to manually disable this form. So I'm just going to add in another criteria here, disabled whenever processing is true. So that's a false. You don't actually have to set those to false, it's just a preference of mine. I'll do the same there, and I'm actually going to do the same with this button as well. So this button will just say delete, and I'll add the class. Alright. And then I will add another button. This one's going to be for going back. So then I will add that click event. And then I'll just do this location dot back. And in order for that to work, you have to go ahead and import location from the Angular router. So that's going to be location from Angular common, and then pass it into the constructor. Right, so that's good to go. Let's go back, and I'm going to add my third button, which is going to be the submit button. I guess I'll name it save. And I'll do save changes, and also add that disabled. I guess I can do that for this one too. Okay, and then since I didn't use, since I'm using the templated forms, I actually deleted the templated forms from this application at the very beginning. So I just need to bring that back in. And I just did that because I didn't think I was going to use it. Whoops. And then just add that. Okay, then you hit save on that, and this is what we have so far. Our delete, go back and save changes. You're going to see this weird code for right now because we haven't done created the get request to get that blog, but we're going to replace that eventually. Alright, so let's go back. Alright, so we're ready to implement this on the back end. So I'm going to go into routes and then blogs and create a new one. I'll name it router.get. Do single blog followed by the ID of the blog. As usual, I'm going to test it, and then don't forget you have to go into authentication and disable your middleware for the tokens, otherwise you won't be able to test this in Postman. But don't forget to remove that later on. Alright, then back in Postman, you just want to go to /blogs and single blog followed by any ID. You can just make it up, hit send, make sure you have get request selected, and then you'll get that test returned there. So now I just want to go ahead and look for that blog. So I'll use find one and search by ID, and you get the params ID using, of course, .params, and that grabs this right here, and passes it into the search. Right, so if we don't find it, just return an error. Say blog not found. Actually, I'm not going to send a message. I'll just send the blog. And what I want to do actually, before I test this, I want to make sure the params exists. So I'll say if it doesn't, no blog ID was provided. And then else I'll do the rest of this here. So all right. And so for this first error here, typically you're going to get that error if the ID is not valid. So what you can do is, instead of the error, just say not a valid blog ID. And so afterwards you can go back and copy the ID from the one that we viewed previously. And if you can't get to this page, you'll have to re-enable the middleware for the token. Otherwise you won't be able to verify your login status. But anyway, going back to Postman, if you hit send now, you're going to get this error that we customized here that says not a valid blog ID. So then I'm going to paste in the one I just copied that I know is valid and hit send, and you'll get the entire blog object there. So now we can grab that and implement it in Angular. So I'm just going to go into my services and the blog service and create a new function at the bottom. I'll name it get single blog, and it's going to take in the ID that we're going to pass in as parameters. So we'll create the authentication headers and then return this .http.get, this domain, plus blogs, and I think it was single blog, followed by the ID. You want to make sure you concatenate that, followed by this .options. All right, and then in the back in the edit blog component, let's see, where do I have it? Right here. I can pull this in, and you want to make sure you do it when the component loads. What I'll do is, because I need a method of grabbing this from the URL, so what I'll need to do is import something from Angular, and it is the activated route from the Angular router. And that'll allow me to grab that URL. And I'll just pass that here. Well, actually what I'm gonna do up here is I'm gonna create current URL, and then I'm gonna set that here. It's gonna be this .activated route .snapshot.params. Right, so that'll grab that ID there for me. Then I'll invoke the blog service. Actually, let me make sure I imported it. Yep, I didn't import it. Blog service. Okay, so now I can go ahead and use that. And I want this method. Then we'll pass in the current URL as the params, and pass in data. Oops. Okay, and then actually, so right here we actually have to add .id to this because it's going to return it as a URL object, and we only want the ID from the parameters. All right, and then before we test this, you want to go ahead and enable this middleware here, and then go ahead and log out and log back in. And then just go ahead and click edit on any of them, and you should see them pop up. And I'll test another one. Okay, then we need to add an option for whenever this ID is not valid. So say, I don't know, I delete this and type enter. You'll see we get a weird error there. That's because we haven't customized this error. So back in the edit blog component, where am I? Okay, right here. We need to provide some options here. So what I'll do, I'm going to say if data.success. So if not success, that's where we'll have our custom error message. Okay, and so what I'll do is I'm going to create another one called loading and set it to false. Actually, I'm going to set this one to true. And in the component, I'm going to hide this entire form. Let's see, so right here. So I'll say if not loading. So if loading is false. And so we'll only set loading to false if we get here. Right, and that will enable the blog form to be displayed. Otherwise, what I'll do is set the message class to Bootstrap. And then I'll set the message to, we'll say blog not found. Oh, actually, I just realized up here, I set these to Booleans, so you can't do that. So let me just clear that out. Didn't realize that. All right, so now you'll notice if you go to a blog and then say I delete this and go enter, now the form isn't displayed when the page loads and you don't get any weird errors. You just get the blog not found error. And then I guess if you wanted to take the go back button out of here and then maybe place it underneath, that way the users have a button they can click, or you can just let them use the nav bar, it doesn't matter. But anyway, now we need to provide an option to save whatever changes they put here. So if you go back, let's see, where am I? I believe I already added the function to update. Yeah, I did. Update blog submit. So let's go back, and then we'll add that logic here. So we'll set processing to true first so that the form is disabled. And then here we're going to run the function to actually update the blog. Okay, so let's go back to the blog routes and create that here. So it's going to be a put request, and put requests are used for updates. So we'll say update blog, and so same thing, you want to go back to the authentication file and just disable this, the middleware for the tokens. So let me just test that. Change the put, and we get our test message there. So what I'm going to do for this is, since we have the ID saved here, actually we don't. Well, actually we do, because I'm assigning the entire blog item here. And actually, since I did that, I'm not going to need this. I just realized that. And then you'll notice that too. the blog item still loads. So that was just kind of redundant. But we're getting the entire blog object, so we have the ID. So we can use that here, and I want to check for it first. So I'll say if request.body.id doesn't exist, then we'll return an error. It says no blog ID provided. Right, and then you'll see that error here. So let's go ahead and grab an ID to use. And I'll pass that into the body. Paste that in there. All right, and then else, we'll search for that blog with find one. Okay. Oh, actually, that should be _.id. And then as usual, if there's an error, blog ID was not found. And actually I can say not a valid blog ID. And then for this one, I'll use that the blog ID was not found. Right. And then so next what I want to do is I want to verify that the user that's trying to update this is actually the person that posted it to begin with. So here in our middleware, we're saving the user that's logged in, right? Their information in this decoded request.decoded. So we can access that here. And so what we'll do is say user.findOne, and we'll search the database for a user that matches the request.decoded user ID. Oops. Say user. And if that user is not found, we'll just say unable to authenticate user. So then here we want to run a check. We want to check if the user's username is equal to, well, if it's not equal to the username of the person that created the blog, right? So we'll say blog created by is what we used. Then you can just say something like, you are not authorized to edit this blog post. Then else, it is them, and then we'll let them do the edits. So we can check for the title. So we'll say request.body.title as well as the body, and then we'll just hit save. Right, and that's our success. Now, one thing that I forgot to do is with the getting the single blog. So when the users go to this page initially, I forgot to check to make sure that the person trying to get this blog is the person that posted it, right? So not everyone should be able to view this page, only if you actually were the one that created it. So basically the same thing we did down here. We just have to do that same thing up here. So I'll do that right here. And I'll say find one. Alright, so that fixes that. And so then I'm going to enable this middleware because I want to actually test this. So I'm going to log out and make sure this is still working. So I'm going to hit edit and you should be able to see that. Now if you feel like going through the trouble, I don't really feel like it, but you can get the ID of these other posts that don't belong to the user that's logged in and see if you can access them. You shouldn't be able to if you followed exactly as I did, but I don't really feel like testing that right now. So going back, let's see where we left off. Oh, we can go ahead and create the service for updating that. So we'll say edit blog. It's going to take in the blog object. So we'll create those headers. Then return http.put. Alright, so then I can use that in my edit blog component. And here is our function. And then pass in that blog object. So if we don't have success, go ahead and set my errors. So I'll set the class. Then I'll end processing so users can enable the form. Otherwise, I'll set this to success. And then I'll use set timeout. I'll set it to 2 seconds. And what I'll do is I'll just navigate back to where they were before, which is the blog page. And so I have to also pass in router. So I'll just add that right here. Okay, and so that should be good. All right, so let's go ahead and test this. I'm going to click this one right here, and I'm going to test it with something. And hit save changes. Should get that success, and you'll see that new one right there. All right, that is it for this video, and in the next one, I'll show you how to implement this delete.